This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
The day's wrap of top business stories. Power Business.
Power Business with Khaya Sithole, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. and Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Welcome back to the Wednesday evening edition of Power Business. My name is Khaya Sithole, here with you until 8 p.m. From 7 p.m., we're going to have our Power Boardroom. We'll be focusing on the stroke of midnight, because at midnight tonight, the POPI Act, which is the Protection of Personal Information Act, will actually become law, which means that everybody who's been calling you randomly over the past few years, selling you things that you didn't know you needed, and calling you back and forcing you to speak to robots that try and tell you about things that you have no interest in, will suddenly have to explain where exactly they got your details from and how it came to be, if you ever did actually even consent to them having your information. And a lot of you would have probably been receiving some random calls and a lot of emails today that say, hey, are you aware that the law is changing? Are you still happy with us keeping your information? And for some people, you didn't even know that they had your information to begin with. So that's going to be the focus of our conversation from 7 p.m. If you'd like to share some of your insights and some of your frustrations, you can get hold of us on 0861 987 000, and that's going to be from 7 p.m. Speaking of frustrations, I imagine being the Auditor General of the Republic of South Africa is a job filled with frustrations, particularly when you try to report on the state of public finances, particularly at the municipal level, which is where a lot of us have our primary interaction with government. There are 257 municipalities, but as it turns out, very few of them know actually how to account for the public resources that they have. The situation is not improving. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be reflecting on that with someone who observes these things much more diligently than I do, and this is Miyelani Holeni, who's a group chief advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. Good evening, Miyelani.
Good evening, Khaya, and good evening to the listeners.
It's a dire state of affairs. How did we end up here in relation to the state of municipal finances, sir?
I guess the decline in the municipalities has been coming with regards to the loss of skills. It has also been coming with the sense that each and every election that comes through, some people exit the system, especially councillors that may have had key positions such as driving the finance portfolio as well as the technical portfolios. There's an exodus of skills both on the political leadership as well as the officials. Some municipalities have not been able to replace accounting officers and chief financial officers, and so the picture continues to decline as the years go by.
When we do talk about that sense of stability which seems to be missing, I can understand why every 5 years an entire council must be dissolved and then they must go and convince the public that they're still worth their salt. I'm less convinced that the people that are pushing the spreadsheets behind the scenes should be subject to the same type of 5-year time frame, that same type of instability. Is it how it is structured, or is it simply an accident of the new broom seeking to sweep clean even if there's nothing to sweep?
So the Municipal Systems Act has put in place, obviously, the terms of municipal managers as well as chief financial officers are kept at 5 years at a go. And this had in mind the fact that they need to be performing based on the contract. But it looks like it may also have had some unintended consequences where it does the opposite of where someone is edgy to leave after 4 years or to look for another job, or they are not sure they'll be retained. For some, it becomes an instrument that they are threatened with, that their contract will be revoked if they are not towing the line in other cases. But most importantly, if we go deeper into the machinery of the municipality, where you require critical skills such as the finance department, such as the technical side, looking after the assets, the budget office, and all of those areas which are number-driven. You may find sometimes those departments may not have the requisite skills, or for some reason have people in acting positions, or juniorized in some way so that you're not able to go through the number crunching to that extent. So that's where we start finding the cracks within the system, where record keeping is poor, And unfortunately, the leadership is not in place to be able to marshal the troops to get to a point where the basics are done properly.
We had an extraordinary testimony earlier this week at the Zondo Commission where Deputy Minister Zizi Kodwa said, well, the reason I do not pay my loans back is that I actually do not have job security. I could be fired any time. And of course, he could technically be fired at any point in time, but I don't think the president is that random. Now, when you come back to the coal face of local government at municipalities, even though a council may have the power to dismiss me, surely it's not arbitrary. There should be some protections that say it's a 5-year contract and you'll only lose it if you do something wrong. That security of tenure should be able to give me the freedom to say I'm going to do my job and not worry about who may or may not be in political office from one day to the next, right?
So theoretically, but practically, various scenarios have transpired. I'm aware of some of the municipalities where they've outstead, for instance, the executive mayor, and they've outstead, for instance, the municipal manager. You go through the court system, and you may find that an appeal can actually prevent those people from returning to their positions. So you may find a basket of different, things that take place. What we've also seen as well is that some of the municipalities have sought to make some of these positions a little bit more permanent, say for the legislated position, such that if you have a strong revenue manager, you have a strong budget office person, you have a strong supply chain person, a strong expenditure or treasury office person, as well as in the technical offices, at least you have continuity from an executive management point of view, save for what you would call the group head or the head of department. That would be a different case. So the idea that we may put forward is that, yes, there is stability, there should be security of tenure. However, the system sometimes may malfunction to that point. But the key thing is that if you are building scalability or scale within the department, it may at least ameliorate the position where a head may, for whatever reason, be suspended or be subjected to any kind of suspension. So those are the municipalities that we have seen performing better because they have scaled internally or they've sought the additional capacity from externally.
0861 987 000. We're reflecting on the municipal audit outcomes. If you'd like to join this conversation, that's where you can join us. You can also tweet us at PowerFM987. I am in the conversation with Miyelani Holeni, who's a chief group advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. We have a caller for you, Miyelani. Butana in Rosebank. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening to your guest there.
Yebo.
How long are we going to be told about this excuse of lack of skills in municipalities? Yet we've got accountants that are unemployed. That of lack of skills is something deliberate. You put the comrades that are there to steal.
All right.
And unless they solve that problem, that thing is going to go on forever. For 27 years, we've been told about lack of skills. That's nonsense.
Okay, that is Butana in Rosebank with a very strong view around the skills alignment. Miyelani, the skills alignment or the prevalence of skills or the absence of skills, is that a key contributor to the poor outcomes that we see?
It definitely is one of the contributors. And I guess, if we turn to solutions of how do you solve the issue of skills within municipalities, some municipalities have started cadet programs where they are affiliated, for instance, to on the financial side to train chartered accountants, and they are training those chartered accountants within their ranks. Some are also have implemented the internship system. We see that is another approach that can bring in skills into the municipality. However, those programs would need to be finalized. We've also seen that there are other additional courses, especially the competency courses, which have been set by National Treasury, which a lot of people are undergoing through various institutions. Others are also taking it upon themselves to go through the recognition of prior learning. So I think we need a program that is going to deal with skills much more intensely. And looking at the bottom end or the entry level to municipalities, as well as the continuous improvement of skills within municipalities, because technology changes, practices changes, regulations change, So there needs to be a stringent as well as a concerted effort to drive the continuous education of municipal officials across the board. So that is one way that we believe we can also deal with the issue of the skills that are within there. The reality of the other situations is that if skills leave local government, it's not easy to replace them. So it means we need to grow the skills there. Alternatively, or in tandem with the training, we need to look at shared services models, especially at district levels, where we at least capacitate districts to the point where they can be of support to locals with areas where they may be struggling.
Yeah, and I think obviously we have to acknowledge that perhaps we do not have enough people spread across the ecosystem to ensure that every single municipality gets the right resources there. We have another caller for you, Nduna from Pretoria. Good evening.
Hello. Yeah, my question is very simple. We need to be honest sometimes. Why is it that for the past decade and a half, it's always DA municipalities that do very well? It's always ANC municipalities that do very badly. Let's be honest. What's happening?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That is Nduna in Pretoria. Miyelani, I don't know if you can speak into the politics of what we're seeing in the few good performers. It seems that they're dominated by municipalities that are run by DA-led governments. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, I think taking politics out of it, what we've observed with the cohort of municipalities that are doing well, it's the stability as well as the tenure of the officials, where, for instance, municipal managers, chief financial officers, as I've mentioned, tending to stay longer, and they are making a career out of local government. And some of them have been in the system for much longer, which helps with training the up-and-coming officials that would want to fill those positions. So there's some kind of continuity as well as long-term planning or succession planning with some of those municipalities. I also bring it closer to home that, yes, we may try to delineate this problem along political leadership or which ruling party is at the helm. We can come back closer to home, the Steve Tshwete local municipality, which is an ANC-led municipality, and of course, in Gauteng, which is the Mid-Vaal, similar characteristics as with regards to the type of leadership, but it's consistent across the board. If you have very strong skills and leadership and accountability at the level of the accounting officer, the chief financial officer, the technical managers, the chief audit executives, and all of those key people, you will have municipalities that perform better. And those that do not perform better have fallen victim, for instance, to people who are acting and perhaps are not full-time in that position, so may perhaps not taking it to the point where they are accountable, or at least have another job that they are still performing over and above their acting capacity.
The Mid-Vaal is obviously the great outlier because it's not as small in relation to what we see in other parts of the ecosystem. It's quite sizable, and yet they've been able to crack up a record number of consecutive clean audits. Are there any obvious things that they do that they could say everybody else should probably adopt this model so that they can move closer to it? Or is it simply just an accident of luck, having the right people in the right political and administrative leadership there?
Well, municipalities like those tend to build very strong controls in place. They also start the accounting process from day one. The financial year for municipalities starting tomorrow is when most of these municipalities who are performing well, they are quick to start on the blocks. And don't have to wait until the mid-year to start looking at what the records look like. So there's an ethos of applying controls, there's an ethos of planning, there's an ethos of accountability, there's an ethos as well of record keeping, which is something that helps a lot when it comes to compiling information and having evidence. And also the committees that are also set up to administrate various things are also tend to function well and produce the outcome. And over and above that, as I've said, the tenure as well as the security of tenure being one, the length of service and the skills that are there within those municipalities. But it's a combination of things that must be mastered all at once. I also say in some forums, and I maybe say it again, that a municipality is a business in the public sector and requires a lot more than just the administrative capability, but also requires the enterprising side of things to be able to deal with things that are not necessarily just administrative.
Yeah, and that's quite a key consideration. The Auditor General did highlight that, that matter of people not being on track with what they are spending and how they're spending it from day one means that towards the end of the year, when they then realize that she's about to show up, they suddenly start hiring all these consultants to say, put all of this together, try to track where the money flows are. And unfortunately, by the time that happens, it's too late. And the quality of even those reports that have been prepared by consultants that can be quite expensive is still not worth the paper that is printed on. How do we fix that?
Basically, in those municipalities that do not have capacity, they have been able to source the capacity from consultants. But the trick with working with consultants is that there must be transfer of skills. There must also be transfer of technology. There must also be transfer as well of the various ways or the techniques that are utilized to achieve the same goal. So with municipalities that are sourcing that additional capacity, the greatest thing to do is to pair, for instance, internal employees with the consultants that are working there, such that there is that ownership. Because at the end of the day, whatever is done by an external person within the municipality needs to be owned by the municipality. It's not just the output of it, but it's to make sure that the outcomes of it are embraced fully and are owned fully and are institutionalized into the municipality. So part of it is that there are municipalities that, of course, will leave it until too late, of which we would advocate that if you are going to source capacity, try and do it earlier, because it helps to at least focus and set up a program that would be able to achieve the outcomes that are required, as opposed to leaving things until the last minute where you're scrambling and trying to almost look for information where it has not been kept properly. So the skills base of municipalities, or at least the seeming in some cases, lack of skills, can also be augmented and have a mixture of some of the skills that are sourced from a consulting point of view, but with a view of at least achieving the goals and setting the bar even higher in the following year, so that they are not still doing the basics.
The data in front of us indicates that the people that should be there either simply do not exist or they're not doing their job. So the next question is, at 257 municipalities, haven't we stretched ourselves too thin as a country? Because if it turns out that we do not have 257 fully capacitated municipal offices, administrative offices, CFOs and municipal managers, perhaps we need to revisit why it's 257 in the first place. Is this a question that has risen before?
The question is always arises. You will know that with the transitional local councils, there were more municipalities that were there, and we had to go through a system of consolidations. We have at least come down to about 257 municipalities and about 44 districts. Some of the municipalities that are still there are largely grant dependent and do not even have a revenue base or do not have an industry that supports the generation of revenue within that municipal area. So some of the municipalities literally are dependent on the fiscus to be apportioned a equitable share or grant to even perform their functions. So some of those municipalities, there should definitely be consideration of looking at how the merging of some of the municipalities and taking away at times the whole notion of trying to create boundaries for the sake of creating boundaries, but to create areas which are going to be functional and are going to serve the people better and are going to be more sustainable and benefit from at least the activities that would take place in a particular area, especially economic activities. So there should be pooling of resources such that municipalities in those areas, especially in the far-flung areas of the country, can be in a position to be sustainable or looking at using the district even more, such as what the district development model is seeking to achieve, such that municipalities become a lot more financially sustainable.
That inability to diversify income streams and that reliance, that huge reliance, in fact exclusive reliance on grants, means that the municipalities occasionally have to do trade-offs, and those trade-offs mean that between paying salaries and paying Eskom, the answer seems to be fairly obvious. So now we have a crisis at Eskom, owed billions by the municipalities. We have a similar crisis at water boards, owed billions by the municipalities. And again, in the absence of them diversifying their income stream and finding a way of catching up, we're not going to solve this anytime soon, are we?
Well, in terms of the issue of diversifying of revenue is a key and crucial item that municipalities should be looking at. The four key considerations within municipalities is that, of course, they must deliver services, but they also have this critical function called local economic development, of which it's not taken as seriously as it should, because local economic development is the one that creates industry within a municipal area or a district area. And that industry is the one that, for instance, comes and invests and employs people. And thereafter, those people who are employed are able to afford municipal services. So the whole issue of diversifying services is one. But on the other side, if there's no industry to absorb people such that they are working and they are able to afford municipal rates, it becomes futile. In those municipalities where they find themselves owing Eskom, they either have not been very strong with managing their revenue, or at least ensuring that the consumers that are there or the customers that are there pay for their municipal electricity accounts, water, or the total bill thereof. And hence they may find themselves in a position where they now bear the brunt of having to owe Eskom and are not able to settle that particular debt. So the local economic development becomes a key function to deal with even the diversification of revenue line items within those municipalities, of which there is a number of items that municipalities can tap into. Not only the 5 services of electricity, water, sanitation, refuse collection, as well as the property rates.
Ntiyiso Consulting has got useful insights into how some of these issues can be resolved. A person sitting, pulling their hair out, looking at the results of their own municipality that says, maybe let's look at something different, let's look at an alternative. How do you, as Ntiyiso Consulting, actually then try to assist in places where you are welcome to do so?
In those places is we've developed the revenue maturity benchmarking diagnostic tool, which is essentially to help municipalities to see where they may be weak, whether it's lack of completeness of revenue or the inability to convert revenue from existing line items, or poor in terms of procedures and processes, which is more administration, or the protection of revenue, which is to check for illegal connections and the likes. We also have deployed, for instance, the revenue enhancement strategies and put together plans that can assist municipalities. But something that we've been doing quite a lot of now is to use the whole notion of data, the data science or the data analytics, to be able to analyze various areas of opportunities which can be presented to municipalities. And of course, recently we also look at the customer, because municipalities should also realize that they are competing for the same customer as multi-choice. They are competing for the same customer as Pick and Pay, and hence they need to do a lot more to keep that customer interested and to have their share of wallet. So those are the 5 key areas that we would help municipalities to look into and improve those areas so that they become a lot more competitive. So the diagnostic tool goes through all of the different items to the point where we can show gaps and be able to build plans that close those gaps within a reasonable period of time. And it's progressive because we may start where a municipality is at the lowest to all the way where a municipality is performing at the highest, where we would call that municipality a superhero. So it's a 5-point scale that we could take a municipality to a point where they become a great performer and have clean audits and have very strong revenue basis.
That utopia of getting us to many more clean audits than what we're seeing now is something that we can all hope we get to at some point in time, and hopefully Ntiyiso Consulting can start driving us towards that particular state of affairs, because the way things are across the 257 municipalities right now quite simply just isn't good enough. Thank you very much, Miyelani Holeni, the Chief Group Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.